Yes, I'm optimistic about the music business, and I have very specific thoughts about that. I think that a lot of people outside the music business who pay attention to the press are scared because the press is very, very, very fear-based and very doomsday. I think a lot of people in the music business feel like the end is near or there's a black cloud hanging over them, and I think there's a couple reasons why. I think, first of all, if you work for a large corporation that is in a business that is changing or correcting itself, and you're seeing lots and lots and lots of your colleagues getting laid off or unceremoniously kicked out the back door, that would scare the hell out of me. That's why I'm an independent business owner. Not everybody can be an independent business owner, I understand that. But to use the rich dad, poor dad example, if you're part of somebody else's liability pie, in other words, if you're an employee of someone else's corporation, then you're expendable. And if they need to crunch their numbers, they're going to get rid of you. I think that the music business was being run like a party for a long time. And I think what's ended up happening is that as the numbers... Let me start at the beginning. We all know that CDs created a second generation of pink cloud for the major label music business. We all know that the major label music executives and the owners of those corporations got really, really, really drunk on the profits from CDs. They were paying the artists the same royalties that they were paying them for vinyl. They were charging the consumer basically double in the early days of CDs that people were paying for vinyl and cassettes. When that pink cloud burned off and when everything else went away and CDs became the standard, and then the digital problem happened, and then at the same time the major corporations who owned the music companies started wanting to sell them off and reap the profits that they could get out of them. Of course, everybody had to start running the music business like a business. I got in at the very tail end of the major label business. I did my first deal with Warner in 1998. And it was the tail end of when you could sit across the table from the president of Warner Brothers and negotiate a $3 million deal on a pad of paper. And it was pretty much that simple. These days, there are guys counting the beans before they even send the fax to you. They're probably working in the profit and loss on the fax that they're sending you for the offer. I think that the music business was run like a party for a long time. And I bet that all those guys had a great time while it lasted. I think that right now, I'm having more fun managing bands on major labels. It's a little bit more frustrating because you have to jump through more hoops and get more approvals. But ultimately, it creates a higher level of responsibility for the label, and therefore they're making better decisions, good and tough. I think that on the whole, if you read the press about any industry, about anything, you're going to be having a pretty bad day. I think that the bottom line is kids and even some older people are still very excited about music. I think there's 100 bands every day that prove that. Bands that come out of nowhere like Hawthorne Heights. Bands like Jimmy Eat World, who got dropped from Capitol, made a record on their own, and then ended up selling 3 million copies of that record that they made on their own by doing a deal with DreamWorks and coming back to the game and having 3 or 4 huge radio singles worldwide on that record. I think that there's a reason to be hopeful every day about the music business. And I certainly wouldn't be in this business if I felt like there was no future in it. I think that the major label guys like Doug Morris and Jimmy Iovine and Tom Whalley, yeah, they probably have some real frustrations on their hands and some really challenging things on their hands because they're running giant corporations. And they're being affected by much different factors than those of us who own independent labels like little old Dangerbird or little old Jade Tree Records or even the bigger indies like Matador and Epitaph. But I think that our worries and our concerns are much different than those of the big majors. Those guys are chasing market share. Those guys are chasing bonuses. More power to them. Those guys are figuring out how many private jet flights can their executives afford? How much can we afford to spend taking Pharrell from the Neptunes out to dinner? That's a whole different reality than what most of us are doing. So